Hey, what's up, guys? Coming back at you, week 2 of the NFL regular season. My name's Ted Rath, NFL strength and conditioning coach. I'm going to use my expertise, my knowledge to help you follow your favorite team, but also your fantasy football roster. So let's cover some injuries and let's talk about what's going on. It's week 2. We're transitioning into it. What you noticed last week, probably specifically with the 49ers and how they handled some of the McCaffrey injury designation stuff. They can kind of slide and hide certain things. The NFL investigated them. They did nothing wrong. This is just part of the game. We're all trying to get a competitive advantage. Every team's doing the same thing. So the 49ers kind of snuck in that Achilles label late. That's significant. And why? Let's talk about the injury designations first. The NFL sets out 3 rules. So basically, game designations at the end of the week on a Friday, each team has to turn this in. What are they? Are they probable? That means they're very likely to play. Questionable. Questionable is a true 50-50, flip a coin, which is interesting because we'll talk about some of these key players that could impact your fantasy team and your favorite team to root for this week. And then doubtful. Doubtful is very unlikely to play. So those are the 3 basic designations. Each team has to label their players within that too. The 4th one that they can use is basically a designation of out. The player will not play. So let's talk about what's going on this week. You saw this with Jordan Love. They actually came out designated as an MCL. So that rotational complex movement where the knee goes into the valgus, that means the knee collapses in. He's got an MCL sprain. The severity, we don't exactly know. So based on the grading, this is typically like a 3 to 6 week injury designation. So we'll see where they go. But the interesting thing, he's going into this week. So we'll talk about him at the end, labeled as questionable, that 50-50. Should we start him? Should we sit him? We'll cover that at the end of the video. Moving on, we look at Christian McCaffrey. Like I said, they labeled that Achilles and they added that onto the calf. That changes the complexity of this entire injury. Why? That Achilles, specifically, if he has chronic changes there, the collagen impact, basically how that joint forms and that connective tissue, if there's wear and tear and basically degradation, that increases his risk of an Achilles rupture. The team is probably going to handle this very, very carefully because they do not want to lose him. This is a big, big, big impact for a lot of fantasy owners out there. We'll cover his designation and what we should do moving on through the rest of the year with him at the end of the video. Looking at Jake Ferguson, this is an interesting one. This could have been a multi-ligament injury. You look at the actual complexity of the mechanism, how that injury looked, it could have been a lot worse. Basically coming down to the same thing. He's got an MCL sprain. He probably has some bone bruising. That's the other consideration of this. Really painful when you do get some bleeding right on top of that bone. So how is he going to be able to rehab through that? How much pain tolerance does he have? All those things are going to impact him. This is a really interesting one. Kirk Cousins, not really injury related. It is, but from a previous year's injury, he just does not look mobile. He is struggling. He can't move in the pocket. This is going to impact your fantasy team. This is going to impact their team as they go off and try to get really a primetime win this week in a hostile environment. This is an impactful one because if he can't move specifically within the pocket, that's really going to increase his chances of sack rate numbers going up and then really trying to get the ball out and move it down the field. That's going to be really hard for their offense. So as we move in, who should we sit? Who should we start? Let's talk about these players specifically. We look at Jordan Love. Once again, he's been ruled questionable. I don't think he's going to play in this football game. 50-50, that's going to be really hard. And if he does, here's the other consideration for you fantasy owners. He is not going to be as mobile. That lateral movement, his lateral ability to change direction is going to be greatly impacted because of this injury. He's probably going to have to wear a bulky brace. You look at all those factors that come into this, and we haven't even started talking about throwing mechanics. As he puts force into the ground, that's also going to basically enhance that rotation through that knee joint. These are all things that you have to take into consideration. So I would sit him this week. I'm just a little bit wary of where he is. McCaffrey's been ruled out. That's an easy one as we go through the remainder of the year, whether they place him on IR or not. If they do, that's minimum 4 weeks out. For you fantasy owners, that's very impactful. So we'll continue to monitor him closely. Jake Ferguson, he's doubtful. I doubt he's going to play in this one. Once again, a lot of pain components with that bone bruise, but also just the MCL and the mechanism of that. It's going to be hard to rotate. It's going to be hard to pass block, hunker down, but also for him to run routes where he's sticking his foot into the ground and providing a lot of force into the turf. And then looking at Kirk Cousins, you're going to have to roll with him, but I would be very hesitant. I don't think that he's going to be the same Kirk that we came to get used to, where he's really productive. He's moving the ball down the field and scoring a lot of points for you guys. So as we go on this, the last one to make note of, the LA Rams placed a high number of players on IR, a couple offensive linemen, and then Puka. So you look at that, there's a lot of impactful ones. So look out for those fantasy numbers. Hit like, hit subscribe, keep following, but keep watching this injury thing as the year goes on. It's going to be an interesting season.